The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts ownership or management. And now, on with the show. This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.
And we're back here at the Westgate Resort Las Vegas in the International Showroom in Elvis Presley's dressing room, continuing our discussion here with Mike Beyer. And we're going to pick up where we left off, and we are still here and going to talk about showbiz. Yes, we left off, let's see, you had just finished like 27 years old. You were doing Queensryche and all these other, amazing. I love Queensryche. They're one of my all-time favorites. Empire, I was like, okay, you guys got me. You got me now. What an amazing album, you know. And so anyhow, so now you're 27 and you've decided, well, maybe I don't want to do this touring all the rest of my life.
Actually, I did it pretty far past that. That's when I started. And by the way, nice modulation effect on Talbot there.
Yeah, you throw little things here so it's not the same old thing over and over and over. You know?
Yeah, I like that. So anyway, I did that for quite a while. Ended up working with a bunch of different people. In a lot of different genres. I worked with Ricky Lee Jones for a tour, who was awesome. Probably artistically my favorite thing I ever did. Rat, even a metal band. I worked with Sanctuary. I worked with Testament, who I actually love. They're a great band to this day. They're probably way better now than they were then, and they were good then. One of the greatest guitar players on the planet. And just everybody in that band's great. My son worships that bass player, and he's amazing and plays nothing but fretless. But anyway, so we ended up, I did a bunch more years of touring, made it all the way through to about 91, something like that, and was just really missing being home, missing my kids. I had 2 daughters at the time. I had a stepdaughter who is now 44. And my daughter who is 38 now. She's turned 38. I miss them. I really wanted to know who the hell Dad was. That was kind of important.
Yeah.
At that point, because I was just gone. And what really pushed me to that was I sat down one day and I said, to myself, how long have I been doing this, and how much time have I really spent at home? And I added it up, and during a 5-year period, I realized I'd only been home 5 months. And
Total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, this can't be good.
No.
And it's not good for me as a dad. It's not good for the kids. So I decided I was done. And then there's a lot of other crap that happened, with, my marriage and just a bunch of just turmoil. So I thought, let's just get the hell off the road. And finally I did, and that's when I moved here. I actually came home for a while. I was actually driving a truck for about a year and a half because I just was burnt out on what I was doing. I'd done a lot of touring. I'd done a lot of, when you start doing multiple jobs on a world tour, that's insane. That's a lot for anybody to deal with. And I had been doing that more than once. And so finally, I, was talking to people, and Darren's like, hey, man, I moved to Vegas, and I'm in the union there, and he was working here a bunch. And so he said, hey, come take a look. I'll show you around. You really should move here because, you can make a decent living and not tour. And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. And then my spouse at the time had family here, some family, an aunt and their family. She goes, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So we did it. We moved here. I started out working for audio services. That was kind of an interesting time. And at one point, I was like senior engineer there, and doing shows, bringing PA everywhere. And then it was funny. It was the first time I think I was ever really in this building working. We did a show at out in what was the Baron and Conrad rooms back then, you know, which holds about, 6,000, 5,500?
Yeah, something like that. Around 6,000, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I remember the first thing I did out there was a FedEx convention. And that was pretty cool because they had a ton of entertainment. So I brought a bunch of, front of house stuff and monitors and ended up engineering a bunch of it. And we had a pretty wide range of entertainment, everything from the Dick Bright Orchestra, and I think they might have had another name for it too, which I can't remember. They're from the Bay. They're from my neck of the woods.
Okay.
Crazy bunch of people and fun. Great kind of fun musical experience. Excuse me. And we had like the Fabulous Thunderbirds. And then there was James Brown. It was the first time I ever met James. That was an interesting, for some reason, him and I we always had this connection. It was the strangest thing. So he comes in, and I'll never forget the engineer that was with me, who was kind of young and, let's just say, full of fire. That's a good way to put it. Decided he wanted to fight with me over who's going to mix front of house. And I was like, he's like, dude, if I don't get to mix front of house, I'm going to leave, and you're going to have to do this all on your own. And I was like, man, that's really crappy. And I'd been there longer than him, et cetera, and I was kind of not very happy, but I was like, all right, whatever. No matter what, I'm a team player. So I ended up mixing monitors that day. And it was for James, so that kind of scared me a little because I'd heard stories. And then I find out James only uses side fills. There are no wedges for him, which is not the easiest thing in the world. So there's nothing up close to him. And but his people helped me out, told me what he wanted. He came in, I put the side fills together. I had some nice stuff. Had some Claire stuff, which was nice. And he started going through the monitors with me. And by the time we got to a song and he's halfway through, he turns around, smiles at me, and he's like, man, it's great. I was like, cool. So this was his deluxe, corporate band. So he brought in a bunch of dancers, extra horn players. This is the super deluxe version of James's thing, which I learned later what the smaller version was. So, I had no idea I was going to be working with him later. So we go through all this stuff, and, I'd never met him before, right? But we're doing sound check, and it's so funny. The front house guy was starting to piss him off because he was mixing it like it was a freaking hip hop show or something. So there's all this bottom end, and finally James would stop. He stopped in the middle of sound check, and he goes, "Man, turn down the low end. What are you doing?" He's all mad, right? And he's like, and then he makes one of his famous quotes, and he's like, "Man, ain't nothing for free. If it's for free, it ain't no good anyway." So he's yelling at the guy in front of house. So he kind of gets embarrassed and chills out a little bit. So we go do the show that night, and James is, and during the sound check, this was something that was amazing, one of the most amazing things I ever saw. So James is going through, and he's arranging songs and working with these horn players during the day. He's at sound check, and he goes, "Okay, horn section," and then he's telling, "All right, trumpet player, I want you to go," and he's going through humming parts, but he's humming notes, and he's showing the guy a horn part. He's composing these horn parts in his head and telling the guys on the fly. And then we go through, we rehearse, and it's awesome. And I'm like, I never really understood what a musical genius that guy was until I watched him arrange his own show with all his band members and conduct a band. I was like, God damn, this guy is freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
For whatever craziness James went through in his life, whatever hardships, whatever chemical things he did, dude, the guy is freaking brilliant. He was brilliant.
That's because, he didn't have a musical degree like a lot of these guys did, but he knew what sounded good in his head. He knew it would sound good. and he wanted you to do that. And even if you go, yeah, but that's not how you really write music, and he'd be like, just do what I say.
Yeah. Do what I say, and look, here's the groove I want.
Yeah.
He just knew how to
He
build.
just knew what it was.
He heard the funk in his head, dude. It was crazy. And it was amazing to watch. And I was thrilled to be a part of it that day. So we do the show, and there's all the dancers and craziness and all this fanfare going on, but it's a great show, and I'm marveling at this whole thing. And this James at that time was probably late 50s. He was getting older, but he still was in pretty good shape. So we do the show, everything's great. Audience is losing their minds, and it's FedEx. It's a FedEx convention. It's funny. So those people are they know how to party. So they're having a great time. And then James starts introducing the band. So he's introducing the band around, and all of a sudden he goes and he turns around and looks at me from the front of the stage and goes, "Put a spotlight on the sound man." And I'm like, "What?" Spotlight comes on me, and he goes, "Man, I want to thank the sound man. Thank you. Oh my God, thank you. Man, you made this a great show for me." And I was like, "Is this really happening?"
Yeah.
I was like stunned. But it was like one of the coolest moments. I'm like, James Brown just called me out, man. This is pretty cool, in a good way.
Yeah, you don't get those very often.
Well, plus I'd heard so many horror stories about him. Oh my God, he's a handful. Oh, you got to. Oh man, I wouldn't want to be you. But he was great, and that was a great day. And then and then a couple of nights later, on that same convention, I set up a whole nother system. And it was one of the greatest things I ever saw. We had Burt Bacharach and Dionne Warwick.
Yeah, that's a good show.
Oh my God. And it was the coolest arrangement of a show I'd ever seen. She did like 60 songs, 50 or 60 songs. And I was like, what?
Yeah, they power right through them. And the two of them together are just wow.
Yeah, but it's medleys. And there's it's anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute and a half of these songs.
Mm-hmm.
So they just power through them. And you forget, you don't realize. And she's singing other, stuff that other people made famous and her own stuff. Obviously, you know the way to San Jose, blah, 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 blah. But she's doing Carpenter stuff. And, because freaking Burt and Hal David, man, may Burt rest in peace. Oh, my God, what an amazing freaking songwriter. You forget how many hits he really had. And she goes through and sings them all, and she's awesome, and her pitch is spot on all night, and Bert's playing his ass off, and the band's great. And I was just like, this is why I wanted to do this.
Yep, exactly.
Was times like this.
Shows like those just go, there you go.
Those guys and James and Celine and all the other things that I got to see over the years. But that moment was so amazing, and it was just like, you can't pay to do this. You know what I mean? It's like, here I am. I'm getting paid to be here, and I would pay to be here. And it was just awesome. Just amazing to watch, and I just felt like the luckiest guy in the world, But we
get those moments.
Yeah.
And they're just moments. It's not every single night, but it's once in a while those things happen. You just go, oh my heavens!
Yep.
This is amazing.
Well, it reminds you of why you do this,
yep.
and it's one of those fringe benefits that is not. It's not a tangible thing. It's just there. It's just a moment, but it's so important, and it's the stuff you never forget.
And it's like you say, it's not money or anything like that. It's just you have that feeling like, oh my heavens. This is a night. This is one of those nights.
Yep. It's one of those nights, or is this really happening? I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
And there's way more of those times that happened. And it was interesting right after that. Right after all that happened, it was like 95 when that happened, because I still hadn't gotten in the union yet. And I did a lot of broadcast stuff as well. So after that, I had done some more stuff for audio services for a while. And then that kind of was going by the wayside. They were going to close this office here. And I had been doing a bunch of broadcast stuff. And I did a lot of boxing, lots of boxing. Saw some amazing stuff, Saw like, 3 Tyson fights and De La Hoya and, the usual suspects.
Tyson fights were, 1 minute.
Well, and that was during that comeback time too.
It's like, the poor people who paid that kind of money to go see a fight, and he walks in there and pap, pap, pap.
Oh yeah,
done.
90. I saw one of the 90-second fights. That was pretty funny. I'm like, it's over? What?
Yeah.
So anyway, I was doing some smaller boxing match. I can't remember the name of the promoter, but it was a guy who did smaller fights. And we had this crappy broadcast truck from my hometown of all places, the famous Group W truck. Great name for that truck. So I'm working on that truck at Caesar's Palace, but it was some smaller fight, and I was A2ing, and had this A1 who I'd never met before, and he, super nice guy, knew his shit. Sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know if we can do that.
No, it's all good.
But anyway, super nice guy.
This is PG-13. It's not
Yeah.
G.
I know. I just upped it from a G rating. So anyway, we're working together, and we just hit it off. Nice guy, and he starts talking to me. He's like, "Man, you're really good." And he goes, "Do you have are you in the hall? And because you should do some of this stuff in the union, blah, 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 blah." And I said, "Nah, screw those guys," because I was really upset because I'd gone down to the hall a couple times. And the last time I went down there, I had an interview with one of the BAs, and he was like, "Our books are closed, and don't talk to us unless you have some skills that would be beneficial to the union." I go, "I have a whole resume full. Read it." Right? I've been on the road, been all over the world. Blah, 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 blah. Great. I had a great resume. And he goes, "Oh, we don't look at resumes." So I was like, F you, I'm out. Screw you guys. Don't call me, go to hell.
We don't look at resumes. Ooh.
Yeah, we don't look at resumes. And I go, "Oh, I see how this is," and that's when I'd lost it.
The game. It's such games, stuff. Yeah.
And I think on the way out, it said something like, "Sorry, I'm not somebody's cousin or uncle or whatever, but just screw you."
Yeah. Yeah, and that's too bad because, how many guys have we lost that are really good like that? But yet people will bring in, some distant relative that last job they had was, clerk at 7-Eleven.
Yeah, and you can't keep them from the bar across the street.
Yeah, I mean,
They're on lunches
Yeah.
from calls. But did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. I'm retired. I can say anything.
Exactly. And
I don't have to impress anybody on anything ever. So, anyways, Mike, we're going to stop right there, and we're going to pick up on the next episode in just a moment. Until then, Mr. Talbot Snow, please take it away.
This is the Craig L. Hayes Show.